Welcome back, viewers. This is South Speaks, and if you're thinking it's another day where we'll be talking about some political development, then there will be a lot of political bickering. Well, that's not the case because this is again a very important discussion about a health-related subject that's now becoming a cause of concern. Now, imagine you go out for a swim in a fresh water that looks perfectly clean and normal, and then you are told that you contracted a deadly brain-eating amoeba. Well, sounds scary, doesn't it? But this is exactly what's happening to some people in Kerala right now, and authorities are also now on high alert. In a tragic turn of event, a 14-year-old boy in Kerala has fallen victim to the deadly brain-eating amoeba, which is also known as scientifically Naegleria Fowleri. Now, this marks the third such fatality in the state within the last 2 months, raising serious concerns about the spread of this rare but also highly dangerous infection. In fact, health authorities have already swung into action. They're already conducting awareness campaigns and also intensifying surveillance to prevent the further spread of this deadly pathogen. In fact, the chief minister of the state as well has now given a list of advisories for the citizens to follow. We'll be running that on our screens in a short while from now. But as weird as it sounds, this brain-eating amoeba, also, like I said, it is scientifically known as Naegleria Fowleri. This is the culprit behind all of these deaths. Now, this thrives in warm, freshwater bodies. It enters the human body through the nose and travels to the brain, where it can cause a rare and an often fatal condition known as primary amoebic meningoencephalitis. With limited treatment options available, prevention remains the key focus. Experts have advised people to avoid swimming or even diving in warm freshwater sources, especially during the summer months when this particular amoeba is the most active. In fact, they've also stressed the importance of seeking immediate medical attention if any symptoms such as severe headaches, fever, confusion arise. In fact, as the state grapples with this particular public health crisis, the tragic loss of young lives has also sent shockwaves throughout the community. In fact, health authorities are also now working tirelessly to raise all the awareness that they can and also implement measures to ensure that Kerala, of course, remains safe, and this is something that doesn't become a major issue across the nation. In fact, joining me right now is a doctor who treated one of these patients that passed away. Dr. Abdul Rauf is joining us on the broadcast. He's a consultant pediatric intensivist of the Baby Memorial Hospital from Kerala. Dr. Abdul Rauf, appreciate you joining us on the broadcast. I really appreciate you taking your time out for this very important discussion.
Yeah,
Of
good
course,
evening, Mr. Ashish.
I
Yeah.
was I was informing our viewers here. Right, right. I was informing our viewers about how you treated one of these patients who suffered from this, infected with this particular amoeba that is now being called as the brain-eating amoeba. Now, just to help us understand, what was the condition of the child when you first saw the child, and what were your first findings?
Yeah, thank you. So let me clarify. Actually, in this year, there have been reports of 4 confirmed cases of amoebic meningoencephalitis, out of which 3 have been treated by our team. And unfortunately, 2 children succumbed in spite of all possible treatment, and 1 child is under treatment and is thankfully responding to the treatment. Yeah. So I will the example of the child who succumbed yesterday. He had taken bath in a pond 8 days back, and after 1 week after the swimming, he developed high grade fever, headache, vomiting, and which progressed over 2 days, and he became unconscious. So he was brought to from a initially from a primary healthcare. He has got sought treatment, and from there he was referred to us. And while he was brought to us, he was unconscious. So we had to put him on ventilator, gave him all necessary medications. We proved the diagnosis of amoebic meningoencephalitis as quickly as possible, and we gave him all possible treatment described for amoebic medication. As per the CDC, it is a combination of around 6 antibiotics and antifungals. But in spite of that, his condition continued to deteriorate, and unfortunately, he succumbed yesterday.
Now, Dr. Rao, from what I understand, you gave him a cocktail of multiple drugs that, of course, is something that you believed would have treated him. Help us understand about is there any sort of a vaccine for this? Is there any sort of a treatment methodology? Because from what we understand right now, the fatality rate in this particular illness is very, very high. So, is there a clear-cut method of treating patients, or is it again just a luck by chance?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, if we see the total cases in the world reported till now, there have been around 400 cases reported in world till now from 1960s, and out of which around 20 to 25 people have survived. So the case fatality is reported to be around 9 to the tune of 95%. Now there is a recommended treatment protocol, and around 5 drugs have been recommended as per the Center of Disease Control USA, which includes amphotericin, fluconazole, rifampicin, azithromycin. They are different antibiotic regimen, but none of these works in a magic way, or none of this is a proven drug of choice. But this combination do work in some children or in some patients who are diagnosed very early. And we feel I mentioned earlier, one of our patient, a 15-year-old boy who is under our treatment, he was a early diagnosis. We could start treatment within 24 hours, and till now it seems that he is improving and is responding to the medications. But just
Also,
to add one line,
Dr. Rao, it's a good
so
thing to know that he's responding to the medications. Right, go ahead.
yeah. So comparing to the other meningitis like bacterial or viral meningitis, in amoebic meningitis, the disease progress very rapidly. That is within 48 hours, the disease progress and it reach a kind of irreversible state, from where even if we give all these medications, the chance of recovery is very, very less.
Right. I was actually going to come to that point as well, because from what you from what you just told us about the case timeline, it sounded like the boy fell very sick very soon as well. So that's of course one of the biggest causes of concern. But the other thing, Dr. Rao, that I'm seeing here, almost all the cases that we are seeing right now involve children. Now, is this something which is a pattern that, again, it's a pattern that's actually developed, or again, is this something that we're reading too much into and this can affect anyone?
So whatever we are discussing now is about primary amoebic meningoencephalitis. So world over, this case has been reported maximum in the age group of 10 years to 25 years, commonly in males. The reason reported are, the first, this age group of children are more active. They have good chance of jumping, the habits of jumping and diving to the pools. So we should understand that just by swimming, this usually does not occur. So when we jump or dive to the pool, when the contaminated water enters through our nose with a force, then there is higher chance of infection. So that is one of the reason this age group children are very active. The other reason could be that this infection, water enters through the nose and it has to penetrate a plate called cribriform plate and enter the brain. So it's possible that scientists think that this cribriform plate may not be completely closed or may not be completely matured before the age of, say, like 20 or 25. So that is why this infection is more common in this age group. Now, having said that, the older patients,
Right.
like 40 or 50 years, if they are immune deficient, if they have any problem with their immunity like diabetes, kidney disease, heart disease, etc., they also can get this different kind of amoebic infections.
Right. So from what I understand, Dr. Rao, is that this usually affects younger children between the age of 10 and 25. And if older people are immunodeficient, then they could also succumb to this particular illness. Now, before I let you go, I just have this one final question. You were talking about one of those patients that you're looking at. Help us understand what are the common symptoms that you see, because a lot of viewers watching right now, they might be getting a little worried as well, because we on Mirror Now do not want to be alarmist when it comes to something this serious. So help us understand what are the symptoms that you witness, the key symptoms in this particular illness, and also how can one stay safe?
So the symptoms are very similar to any other meningitis, like headache, vomiting, high-grade fever. These are the initial symptoms, and it rapidly progresses. And the late stage symptoms, once the patient worsens, include unconsciousness, seizures, etc. Now, comparing to bacterial or viral meningitis, here the symptoms onset and the progression is very rapid. Okay, so now as per the CDC, if one person has taken a bath or a swimming or diving in a water reservoir, and if you develop any of these symptoms within the next 14 days, it is an alert that they should seek medical attention. Now, as you said, there is no need of panic, because this illness does not spread from one person to another, and there is no way that this can become an epidemic or a pandemic. No way. So the people who go to swimming or diving have to be careful. Now, you asked me about the precautions, so I will explain. Number one, all the swimming pools should be chlorinated as per protocols, and the chlorination level should be checked periodically. So that is number one. Now coming to the other water sources like ponds and lakes, there are no strict chlorination protocol, but in the present scenario, it is better to do chlorination of such ponds in whatever practical way possible. Now, what are the precautions need to be taken by a person who go for swimming? The first thing is, don't go for swimming or diving in a pond which is very shallow or which seems to be contaminated, or where there is no flow of water. Actually, if there is good flow of water maintained, the chances of amoeba staying over there is very less. Now, that is number one. Number two, if somebody is going for swimming and is doubtful whether the water is contaminated or not, then avoid jumping or avoid diving to the water. That is number two. Number three, even if you are swimming through such water, keep your head above the water surface so that water does not enter your nose. Now, if you want to really immerse yourself in the water, then wear a nose clips. Okay, so just following these precautions and these protocols might help preventing you from the disease, and you can stay safe.
Right, right. Dr. Raf, you've given a lot of information about what we could do to ensure that we are safe and all that. Also joining us right now is Dr. Subramaniam Swaminathan, who's also an infectious disease expert as well. Dr. Raf, do stay on with us as we'll also listen into what Dr. Subramaniam Swaminathan has to say. Dr. Subramaniam, appreciate you joining us on the broadcast, taking your time out. We were just listening to Dr. Raf, who's treating several children who are actually suffering from this particular illness. Dr. Swaminathan, my first question to you, of course, is Dr. Rauf is talking about how we should be avoiding fresh water which is contaminated. Now, when you look at a fresh water, I mean, how do you know it's contaminated? I mean, any pond, any lake that you look at, how does one know what lake to avoid? How does one know what pond to avoid?
You can't. The simple answer is you don't know. So unless we have microscopic data available, you won't know. And that's where epidemiology comes in. Please understand, free-living amoeba are not something unique to us or unheard of. See, there are many free-living amoeba which are concerning. Naegleria, Balamutia mandilaris, and of course, acanthamoeba. Now, Naegleria that we are talking about is known all over the world, and it's been reported from almost every continent. US has very clear data of which all areas are very high risk for things like Naegleria and Balamutia. Now, we don't have that data. Unfortunately, that's what we need to focus on. See, what has all the problems that we have faced taught us? We need epidemiology, we need data, we need public health systems. We need to know what the challenges are. Because without knowing that, it doesn't make sense. See, if there is no Naegleria in Punjab and Assam, then this advice doesn't make any sense to them. See, in general, I would alert all our viewers to say that, guys, stop getting panicky. That's number one. Number two, if you want to swim in a swimming pool, which is well chlorinated. Dr. Roth put it very beautifully. I have to agree with him. And swim in a swimming pool which is well chlorinated, and that is appropriate for you. We should not be jumping willy-nilly into any pond of water, any pool of water, and saying, Yahoo, this looks nice. That's not safe at all. See, this is not the only pathogens that we should be worried about. There may be so many other microscopic pathogens which should be concerning. So I think it is beyond just free-living amoeba which could be dangerous. Remember that the number of cases of Naegleria that you see world over is very small. It could also be reporting issues because obviously most places may not have the ability to diagnose all of these. Therefore, it may remain as unknown deaths or whatever. But even if you adjust for that, the numbers are extremely rare. But having said that, the points that remain are A, if you're swimming, swim in proper pools of water. Make sure it is a swimming pool which is well chlorinated. B, don't jump into or drink water or do anything in a pool which you don't know anything about. Even if it's fresh, so-called fresh water, please understand that fresh water is not something that you can willy-nilly use because you don't know the microbial safety of that. So even in the Western world, they have these traveling filters that they have so that the water can be purified before consumption. You don't just consume for fresh water whole, you have to boil it or filter it and things like that. So obviously, there are lots of points here that fresh water is not necessarily 100% safe. It's not necessarily portable. It's not necessarily safe for humans. And finally, if you have symptoms, obviously the best is to listen to medical advice rather than try and self-diagnose because that's just dangerous. See, these kind of problems are extremely rare. the chance that an average physician is going to see it is astronomically low. And therefore, it is not something most people should get panicky about. Yes, it's something we need to educate ourselves about. Yes,
Right.
we need to collect data. We need to test streams of water and bodies of water across India to see if this is a concern, just like we are checking with Zika or Nipah or everything else. And therefore, it is just one more thing we need to be cautious about. But there's really no reason for panic at this point.
Right. Dr. Swaminathan, like you rightly pointed out, I think this is a very important message that we are also giving out to our viewers right now, that this is not a very common illness. While we are talking about this, the reason why we are talking about this is that the number of cases are slowly rising, but at the end of the day, the fatality rate is very high, and that is why it's very important to avoid. And I think the keyword, the buzzword that, of course, you also gave out, and the big quote that I can take from what you, the advice that you gave to the viewers is also that while we don't dig into strangers' food, let's also not jump into water bodies that are unknown to us. Let's only jump into pools that are chlorinated. That's a very good piece of advice that you've given, Dr. Swaminathan. Now, a follow-up question that I have also is the fact that Dr. Rao was talking about how amoebic infections are much more complicated. Now, brain-related illnesses, brain-related infections are all dangerous. We of course have
Correct.
heard multiple such instances, but what exactly makes Naegleria Fowleri so dangerous? If you can just help our viewers understand in a very simple manner.
See, anything that is not a major problem is also going to be much less studied. Unless you have enough numbers, we don't know the natural history of the disease. See, we know some amount of the wild cycle of this particular pathogen, but we don't know exactly why, how, who it hits. I understand that most of the people who fall victim to Naegleria are generally the so-called healthy people. So obviously there is something different which is happening over here. We believe it's small canals between the brain and the nasal cavity through which they're able to escape in. But beyond that, we are not able to say anything more at this point of time. More data needs to come in. So when you have a rare disease like this, it's always a
Right.
problem because you cannot capture data. The first step is always doing two things. One is epidemiological surveys to find the pathogen to see where it is, and also then start doing aggressive case finding. In the places where you see it epidemiologically, start looking at these unknown neurological deaths and then start digging into it to see, are we missing cases of things like Naegleria, to see what more needs to be done. The next step is obviously research in terms of what are the agents which could be helpful in this. And in general, we know that the earlier you find a diagnosis, the easier it is to treat. And that also ties in, because if you're aware that there's a problem, and if you're aware there are cases coming up, doctors are more vigilant. Like, let's look at what happened in Kerala with regard to the second Nipah outbreak. They were vigilant, they saw a pattern, immediately they picked it up. There's no two ways about it. If you are vigilant and you know there is something like that, it becomes easier to pick it up. And after that, we need to have data collection in terms of treatment options being used. You can't do studies in this when it's such a rare disease. That's why we need to have a central repository of cases which have been confirmed, looking at what options have been used for test treatment, and then looking at what works and what doesn't work. We also need in vitro studies and things like that. Unfortunately, this is an orphan disease in that because it's such a rare disease, the interest in the scientific community in doing further research and finding specific drugs for this is going to be difficult. Therefore, we need to have a research-based approach to this, where we have universities and research agencies looking into this.
Also,
rather
Dr.
than asking
Swaminathan, we'll just
pharma
take
to
a
look
quick
into
point from Dr. Rao there, because he was talking about, sorry to interrupt you there, because he was talking about a certain medication that he seems to have worked out that is now working on a few patients. Dr. Rao, Dr. Swaminathan is also on the panel. Can you help us understand what's this cocktail of medicines that you seem to have worked out that you say is also now working on one of your patients who seems to have, recovered quite a bit?
Yeah, so just I will, Dr. Subramanian sir was explaining very beautifully. So the first important thing is early diagnosis. So when the second case came, actually, when we diagnosed the second consecutive case, we made a awareness message and we circulated to all the doctors group, pediatricians and physicians across the state. So the case now I am treating. So when the day he developed symptoms like headache and seizures, the peripheral hospital where he was seen, the physician, he immediately called me and he referred that patient. So we could confirm the diagnosis within 24 hours and we started the treatment, which is again As per CDC, they have recommended a cocktail of 5 medications, especially which include antifungal amphotericin, then rifampicin, azithromycin, fluconazole, and miltefosine, a anti-helminthic
Well,
drug,
Dr.
which was
Raf,
not
in case you
available.
missed it, sorry to
Yes.
interrupt you. Dr. Swaminathan also had a round of applause for you there because, of course, you're pointing out that we're of course, Dr. Swaminathan was also talking about how important early diagnosis and early treatment is, and that's exactly what you seem to have done, and that's exactly what seems to be working. So, a round of applause there by Dr. Swaminathan as well.
Thank you. So both doctors' awareness as well as public awareness is very important. As sir was saying, if anybody has taken bath in these, they have to avoid all this. Now, by chance they have took bath and they develop any of these symptoms, they have to seek immediate medical attention. Yeah.
And if I may add here,
Right,
see,
Dr.
we should
Raf,
not
really
stop with
appreciate
this.
you joining us on the broadcast. All right, Dr. Swaminathan,
No,
one last
sorry.
point we'll take. We just
Yeah, we
are
should
running
not
short of
stop
time on
here.
the
We need
broadcast. So,
to.
one final point
I
we'll take from
understand.
you.
We should say we should now have a public campaign where we educate the public about the safety and the risks of this, so that people don't forget this. We should never have this happen again, and that happens only with public awareness and education. And I think they're making the moves for that. Let's commend them, and let's take this as a good takeaway for the future events that may happen.
Absolutely, gentlemen. Like you rightly pointed out, this is, of course, a very important discussion that we needed to have. Let's not be alarmist about that. Let's actually focus on this scientifically, and also, as a viewer, as someone, I'm pretty sure even a medical practitioner who might be watching you right now might have found this discussion very insightful as well, given the fact that Dr. Rao clearly there helped us understand that early diagnosis and early treatment is also a very key factor, and also the entire procedure there explained beautifully by Dr. Swaminathan as well. Really appreciate you gentlemen joining us on the broadcast. On that note, viewers, it's a wrap on this edition of the Bulletin. For more news and updates, stay tuned to Mirror Now.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.